Is irreducible complexity a valid argument? Well, let's take a look into that. I believe it is a valid argument, while atheists believe that it is not a valid argument. And why would atheists believe that it's a valid argument? Now, there's a particular video out there from a channel called Quality of Soup. Sounds like quality of soup, but it's not. It's Qualia Soup. And he has a interesting video on this. And I'm going to debunk a couple of the claims that he makes here on this. This argument is from Michael Behe, that an object is irreducibly complex, meaning that if you were to take away something from it, it no longer has any function and therefore could not have evolved. Just like the wheel. Okay, no matter what age you look at the wheel from, whether you look at a modern wheel made out of rubber, steel, spokes, aluminum, whatever it is, bolted to a hub, it still has some key aspects to it that was still around from the Stone Age, and that the wheel is round, that the wheel has a center point for an axle. It has an axle, otherwise it's worthless. And the wheel is made out of something relatively durable, such as stone or metal and rubber or other things. So if you were to take one of these things away, your wheel would not work. If you were to take your center axis and put it off to the side, your wheel wobble around all over the place and your wheel wouldn't really work. If your wheels were square, they wouldn't work. If your wheels were made out of something not solid, not durable, if they were made out of banana leaves or some other ridiculous material, you wouldn't get very far with it. So here, this is a good example of irreducible complexity. Now, the Michael Behe argument is that the cell, when he examined the cell, that he saw a motor on it, an actual motor, and that this motor must be irreducibly complex, in that there was no evolutionary stage of it, that this cell could not survive without a means of traveling around to look for food or other things. So this is where he got the idea of irreducible complexity from. And of course, atheists challenge this notion. And a good notion from here, Quality of Soup. Let's see what Quality of Soup has to say on this.
Some anti-evolutionists repeat an argument put forward by Michael Behe, an advocate of the pseudo-scientific intelligent design movement, that biological systems showing irreducible complexity can't evolve gradually because any previous version that lacked a part would be by definition non-functional. Behe has famously likened such systems to a mousetrap, an object he says has 5 necessary parts, but his analogy and reasoning have many flaws. Firstly, this trap is not irreducibly complex. We can immediately remove the base and secure the other parts to the surface on which it was resting. Behe says this just swaps one base for another, but the standard trap and a trap fixed to one spot have significant differences.
This is a very piss poor argument. As you can plainly see, what the argument is that the metal components on the mousetrap are required to be physically mounted to a base. And when he takes off the base and mounts it to the floor, you just have another base. And the Quality of Soup saying, "Oh no, that's That's not how the argument goes. Yes, that is the argument. Is that you have to have something holding all the pieces together, and that's what the base does. If you just simply take all the parts and mount them on the floor, you still have a mounting point for all the piece parts. It's as simple as that. The mousetrap still works because you still have put all the parts and mounted them on the base. You have to take away the base, period. And that's what the argument is. That it is irreducibly complex. If you take it away, not replace it, but take it away, the mousetrap no longer functions. And this is the only element. This is as close as they can get to an argument. It's like saying that, well, I can prove that an airplane is not irreducibly complex. If I take out the engine of an airplane and I put another engine in its place, that's not taking out the engine, that's replacing it. Let's have another look at this argument.
Also, mousetraps are made with a specific goal in mind. Evolution has no such goals.
And how do we know this? Evolution has no goals. Yes, it does. The goal is to survive. Survival of the fittest sounds like a goal to me.
Living mouse catchers didn't plan to evolve that way, and something that catches mice today might have had ancestors ill-suited to that task. So demanding we should be able to reduce a mousetrap to one part and still catch mice doesn't reflect what happens in nature. Thirdly, it hardly challenges evolution if an object we all agree didn't evolve couldn't have evolved.
Here's another piss-poor argument. Things evolve, okay? The computer that you're watching right now has evolved. It has evolved from a single circuit invented by Thomas Edison, the light bulb. Would you like me to explain the evolutionary process of the light bulb to the computer? Very well. When the light bulb was invented, like I said, it's a single circuit. It provides light, and it also provides heat. And it was also noticed that electrons were, or something was collecting on the side of the glass. And later, the light bulb, because of this discovery, was turned into what we know as the vacuum tube. The earliest of radios had vacuum tubes in it. You know what I'm talking about. Radios were big and cumbersome. On episodes of the Waltons, you turn it on, it takes 5 minutes for the thing to warm up. Old TVs had this. Our TV had this. It had tubes in the back. The radio that I used to listen to before going to school had tubes in it. It's not, it reflects my age, but it also reflects an evolutionary stage. And then later, the first computer was made from vacuum tubes. Later, we invented the transistor, and then the transistor radio, and then later on we invented the microchip, and computers got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and now computers have evolved to the step where I can record a message, and years later people can hear this message over and over and over again. A computer is a great example of something that has had an evolutionary process, but it has had an evolutionary process from an intelligent designer.
Let's take this dry stone arch. Remove any part and it collapses. This object does have irreducible complexity.
So there is such a thing as irreducible complexity. Interesting.
But we can still reduce it part by part by following its construction in reverse. The stage before this wasn't 4 stones defying gravity, but 5 stones plus a support structure, in this case a curved piece of wood. And look what happens now. We can take the arch apart piece by piece until only the support is left, forming an arch by itself. We've solved the problem of how to reduce this irreducibly complex object in stages by first adding a part before taking away.
Now this is a great straw man, and I mean that. An arch having a keystone is an irreducibly complex thing. He said that. And then he also demonstrated how that we can take the arch apart and reassemble it. Well, the assemblage or disassemblage of the arch is an irreducibly complex thing. There was, first of all, there was an intelligence behind this. Okay? The intelligence figured out that, hey, first, irreducibly complex, we have to put this wooden structure in there. Then the form can be built and it won't stand up until it's finished. Then when it's finished, then we can take it out. Irreducibly complex. I'm sorry. So this is a perfect example of atheists just wanting there to be arguments for stuff. And I'm going to give you one more example, referring back to the Michael Behe mousetrap argument.
Concept is wrong, and you can even use the mousetrap to show why it's wrong. I'm wearing a tie clip that looks like it's composed of a mousetrap. Now, it's not very elegant, but it does keep my tie in place. But what you'll see when I take this out is that this is a mousetrap from which I've removed two of the parts. I've removed the catch and the base holder. You can't catch any mice with this. But these three parts of the five-part mousetrap are perfectly functional in a different context. And one context would be holding my tie on, another context would be serving as a large paperclip, and a final context that one of my friends used in high school would be as a viciously effective spitball launcher.
So the argument here, going back to the Michael Behe argument, is that, well, the mousetrap is not irreducibly complex. I can take a couple components off of it and I can still use it for other things. That is not the point. The point is that the mousetrap is for catching mice, not to hold your tie, and not to use as a paperclip, not to use as a spitball launcher, but to catch mice. Alright? If I had mice running around in my house, I don't need a spitball launcher, I don't need a paperclip, and I don't need a tie clip. I need a mousetrap. And the mousetrap is irreducibly complex, or it doesn't work as a mousetrap. Well, but it's still usable for other things. Alright, let's take this argument to its logical conclusion. Let's take the female reproductive system. Let's take away a component, any component. Let's take away the ovaries and or fallopian tubes. Done. Now, this device cannot reproduce other humans, but if we turn it upside down, we can still use it as a flower pot. This is the example. Doesn't this sound silly? This is the example given by scientists, I'm assuming atheist scientists, as an argument against irreducible complexity. Well, if you take something off of it, well, it can still be used for something else. No. It's not supposed to be used for something else. It's supposed to be used for the function that it was designed for. Okay? This is why, again, and I'm going to repeat myself from the previous video, that atheists only accept arguments that support their beliefs and ignore or complain or bitch or moan about arguments that don't follow their beliefs. Okay? It is absolutely ridiculous to say that if you take the female reproductive organ and remove a piece of it, that it's still good for a flower pot. Totally ridiculous concept. You cannot reproduce, and if all organs were like this, it would be the end of man. Okay? You can't say, well, hey, it's still good for this, it's still good for that. No. It needs to be good for a specific job.
Michael Behe has argued that the flagellum could not have evolved, since its parts have no function for natural selection to act on until they are fully assembled. But evidence that refutes Behe's claim of irreducible complexity comes from a tiny syringe that injects poison, found in some of the nastiest of all bacteria.
This is a structure found, for example, in Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that causes the bubonic plague. And look at the similarities. Now, this structure doesn't rotate, but it still has to extend this structure, which is equivalent to the rod, the drive shaft here. It has to extend that because it needs this little channel. It's like sort of like a syringe. So the virulence factors that are made inside the cell, which is down here, can be exported, pushed up into this hole, and exported out through this long kind of needle, perhaps into a cell in your body or mine, and thereby create misery.
Now let's pause for a second to closer examine these things. If we take the pictures that the artist came up with, we see that they look very similar to each other. They have the same colors, same general shape. But an artist can do this. They can add things and subtract things and make things look similar or more obscure than what they actually are. People that draw caricatures do this every day. This doesn't actually prove anything because somebody drew this to look like this. If we take a look at the actual picture that the guy is using, then we see that, okay, well, they are sort of similar, but there are distinct differences in there. And having to look at these through an electron microscope is not going to give you the clearest of resolution that you really need to compare these two with. It would be like comparing apples and oranges. Well, they're both round, they both have a stem sticking out of them. Let's look at an example of what I'm getting at. The picture on the left closely resembles to the picture on the right. They're both round, they both have a hole in the center. The general shape is the same. So that must mean that these things are closely related to each other. But if we take away some of the extras that have been added here, and we put the picture into better focus, we see that these things are completely different from each other. What's on the left is a bearing, and what's on the right is a grommet. These things do not even remotely go with each other. If someone put grommets in your engine where there were supposed to be bearings, your engine would last, about 30 seconds before blowing up. Let's take another example. Here's two things that look very similar. But again, the pictures are kind of skewed and washed so that you can't get a clear resolution on it, similar to the electron microscope. And you could debate that these two things have similar functions and they look pretty much the same, therefore it's all the same. But when you clean the picture up, we see that these are not similar objects. One is a water pump and the other is an electrical alternator. One helps flow water to keep your engine cool, and the other provides electricity. You do not get these two mixed up, and this is what they're doing with their example. As a matter of fact, if you were to take this one step further and look at it even closer, you would see that these two are just made to look similar to each other. First they do it with the animation, and then they do it with the actual picture, because they've actually cut away part of the picture to make it look more like the other one. As you can see, here is the actual picture, and you'll see it doesn't match the other picture. What they've done is cut away a bottom section to make it look more like the other one. And they've even actually narrowed one picture up or widened the other one. Here we have a little Photoshop trickery to try to get you to believe that these two things are in fact similar. Why would this thing serve another function totally different than the function that it serves now? Were my eyes used as hearing millions of years ago? No. Was my voice used as another function millions of years ago? No. Then why are people using this as a valid argument today. Why?